Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an upcoming very big winter storm for portions of the Ohio Valley. We're going to be going over my snowfall and rainfall forecast at the end of the video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. We're going to be talking about how much snowfall you could be seeing. We're going to look at the GFS and the European model. We'll also look at where some areas could be seeing their first snowfall. And also, some of these areas could see their first freezes or frosts for some of these areas, especially in the southeast. Extreme winds could be possible for the east coast, where some areas could gust to as high as 60 or 65 miles per hour. Don't be surprised if some high wind warnings go up over those areas. We're also going to be dealing with some brutal cold behind the system, and we're going to talk about that. If you have any questions or you would like a personal forecast for your area, leave a comment down below. I answer pretty much all of your comments, especially if they have a question. I try to get to you as soon as possible, and if I don't respond to you within a few hours, then I most likely didn't see it, and I would recommend sending that comment again because YouTube probably didn't notify me about it. So if you send it again, there's a higher chance that I actually do see it. So before we do get into it, I also want to tell you guys that our December forecast will be coming out on Sunday, which would be tomorrow, and our updated winter forecast will be coming out on Monday. So make sure you are staying tuned for that. You can watch it while this winter storm would be going on, because my winter forecast will actually be coming out on the day of this winter storm. So definitely make sure you have your make sure you are subscribed, and make sure you have your notifications turned on so you don't miss any of those uploads. Now let's get right into it with your current National Weather Service watches and warnings. We have some winter weather advisories in effect for portions of northwestern Texas. That's from that big blob of moisture that's going to be heading out to the north and to the east, and eventually that's going to become our big Ohio Valley sort of blizzard or winter storm, whatever terminology you would like to use. We have some freeze warnings and some frost advisories for Central California, as well as some red flag warnings further to the south of there. Freezing fog advisories for portions of southwestern Oregon, with some air quality alerts and dense fog advisories further to the north of there. We also see some high wind warnings and wind advisories for portions of Montana, and some high wind watches starting to go up for eastern Tennessee. And don't be surprised again if much of this area east of the Appalachians do get under a high wind warning or a wind advisory. I think much of the eastern third of the U.S. by probably Sunday will be under some sort of wind related advisory or warning. Now, here is the GFS model, and in order to understand what is actually going to happen with this storm, we have to go back a little bit. We have to kind of figure out where our weather systems are, what they're going to be interacting with, and what they're ultimately going to do. So in order to figure out how much snowfall you're going to see, you're going to need to figure out what's leading to that snowfall. Why is that snowfall happening? Where is that cold air coming from? And that's what we're going to do right now. So this will be probably by tonight, but this is a good depiction of what our current map looks like, what our current surface map looks like. We have a low pressure up in portions of southern Manitoba and southwestern Ontario there, as well as northern Minnesota and northern North Dakota. We have a big low pressure system that's just been driving moisture through portions of southeastern Texas, southern Louisiana, up through into portions of Oklahoma there, and that is going to be your system that pulls further to the north and to the east. Now, with this system, as it moves further to the east, it is going to be dragging behind it some cold air. Now, that cold air will be what supplies some of that snowfall for the Ohio Valley. So that's going to be our main thing that we have to figure out. How fast does the original system move, the one that's currently over Texas, and how fast does that cold air move in? Because the faster the cold air moves in, the faster the system will move out. But if we have that cold air linger too much, we might have a pretty much all rain event, and we won't have too much snowfall. So it's going to be really a very, very tricky forecast, and we have a good track determined, but we just don't have where that heavy band of snowfall is going to stop, and we also don't have when and where that second system up to the north will move through. So let's play this out on the GFS and see what it does with this system. This would be by Sunday morning, so tomorrow morning. And then as we continue through the day on Sunday and getting into Monday, we start to see our first flakes fall over portions of Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. And this is all according to the GFS model. Also look at those isobars, because this is going to be a big factor with this. To see them all clamped together like this indicates that you're seeing some really, really strong wind speeds. And that's going to indicate probably winds closer to 16 miles miles per hour. Your low pressure is spinning like this, so your winds would be coming out of the south for the east coast, but then as you get into the Ohio Valley, they're going to turn out of the north, so you will actually be getting some cold air also on that western side. The thing that the GFS does is it actually brings that low pressure east of the Appalachians, which means that that precipitation shield won't be able to get as far west, and it actually ends up making a very thin line of snowfall that continues to wrap around. Here would be by Monday night, and as that system is still moving further to the north, you might see a break in the winds for the mid-Atlantic and coastal northeast as you get to Monday night, Tuesday morning, but then they'll wrap back around and you'll get back into that windy pattern. You still see a lot of lake effect going on around the Great Lakes, but other than that, it's really not showing too much. Now, the bigger thing is going to be that lake effect on the backhand side. That system is still lingering as we get to Tuesday in the middle of the day. But as we continue forward on the later parts of Tuesday, maybe some snow showers trying to reach to the coast. But overall, it's going to be, according to the GFS, not too big of a system. The system will be fairly wrapped up, but there's not going to be that cold air to really push in some of that snowfall. It's mainly going to be that snowfall on the backhand side with some of that lake effect. That'll be the bigger story if the GFS were to be correct. Now, let's look at the European model because it shows a lot more in terms of the big storm showing a lot more snowfall with that than it does with the lake effect. It shows a lot less lake effect than it does with that big. It shows a lot more snow with that big storm than it does lake effect. So we're seeing some of that precipitation moving onto the bottom left-hand corner of your screen by that point. This would be by Sunday morning, and then as we get to Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, we're starting to see some of that snow mix in on the western end of the storm system. As we continue through the day on Monday, it is going to switch over to most likely some mixing precipitation. Probably not a lot of ice. I think it might be a rain-snow mix, but probably no ice with this system. We just don't have that layer of warm air above our heads to introduce some of that ice. So I think it'll stay mainly either rain, snow, or maybe you'll get a thin line where you get some mixing, but probably no ice. So that's a good thing with this. But I think the biggest issue is going to be those heavy snowfall totals, especially around the Great Lakes. And as you continue forward, on that backhand side, you are starting to see some of that cold air move in, and so even on the southwestern side of the storm, you might get some mixing. And as we continue forward, that system continues to push up further to the north, but the western half of Ohio into parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, Michigan are seeing some of that snowfall by this point. And as we continue forward, you start to see some of those snowflakes getting rather far to the south. Look at this in portions all the way down to about central Alabama and Georgia getting into some of that snowfall by this point. And then as that system wraps around with that cold air is going to wrap around on that southern side of the system. That warm air still being introduced on that eastern side of the system. You will actually start to see a little bit more snowfall occur in the portions of the western mid-Atlantic, I guess you could say. Now, as we continue this forward, on the European model, we start to see that system kind of sits there. We start to see a little bit more lake effect enhancement go on as we get through the day on Tuesday, and then into early on Wednesday, it's still snowing for some of these areas. Again, don't be surprised if you see over portions of especially eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, southern upstate New York, western Connecticut, western Massachusetts, maybe some snowflakes start to fly as we get to Wednesday morning. It will be cold enough most likely, and also we might have that strong wind off the Great Lakes that might push in some of those snowflakes. And then as we continue through the day, on Wednesday, you still see some of that snowfall lingering on, and it's by this point moving into the northeast and becoming less and less of an issue. Now, let's start looking at a couple other parameters, and then we'll look at the total snowfall for both of those. We're looking at very cold conditions. Here are your low temperatures on December 1st, Tuesday. We're looking at potentially low temperatures to the west in the teens. As you get further east, though, maybe 20s, but look how far south those 20s are getting for portions of central Alabama, central Mississippi, into portions of northern Georgia, getting down below 30 degrees. And I know you can't see the entire southeast by this point because of where the map is located, but I can assure you some of those 32-degree temperatures are getting all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Now, as we get to Wednesday morning, it's going to be only chillier, and these are your low temperatures on Wednesday, and we're seeing widespread 30s for lows as you get further into the Ohio Valley, maybe closer to the 25-degree mark. And then as we get through the day on Thursday, it's only going to become colder, especially as you get some of that snowpack on the ground, according to the European model. Now, here are your forecasted maximum wind gusts through Thursday, and we're looking at in knots, so you would probably have to put these numbers a little bit higher to get the correct conversion for miles per hour. Knots, you might see some wind gusts closer to 40 or 45 knots, and in miles per hour, that's closer to 55 or even 60 miles per hour. If I were to shift this map a little bit further east, you would see over Maine, eastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, you're really looking at some very, very strong wind gusts, especially in coastal Maine. I think those areas could get hit rather hard with some of those wind gusts. Now, also something we have to look at for that blizzard potential. Again, the only criteria for a blizzard is not actually having that much snowfall. It has nothing to do with the amount of snowfall that falls in that storm. It's only visibilities under a quarter of a mile because of snow falling or already on the ground for 3 hours with sustained or frequent gusts to 35 miles per hour. So the criteria isn't actually that hard to reach, especially with a system like this. It's not going to have to do, like, for example, I'll give you an example. Southern Indiana, Kentucky might see blizzard conditions, even though they're only expecting 1, 2, or 3 inches. It doesn't have to be a 1-foot storm in order to be classified a blizzard. It only has to be those visibilities dropping to under a quarter of a mile for 3 hours and having frequent gusts that are getting fairly high, close to 35 or 40 miles per hour. And all of those criteria could be met with this storm. Now, here's the European snowfall totals, and we're looking at a lot of snowfall, especially in the western half of Ohio, Indiana, Michigan. I think these are a little bit overdone, and I don't think there's enough snowfall actually closer to the Great Lakes. I think the longer range models like the European and GFS don't do too good with that snowfall near the Great Lakes. They're not that good with lake effect snow. Now, here would be what the GFS snowfall totals look like, and we're looking at around the Great Lakes is actually doing a little bit better with that lake effect, but I also think this is a little bit too warm of a solution. And if there's anything we learned with storms this year, is that they usually outperform in how much snowfall they actually put out. Usually, most of these storms are putting out more snowfall than what is expected. A perfect case of this is when we had that storm for southern New England, and I actually did a pretty good forecast on that. It was actually quite accurate because I did forecast that band of 3 to 6 inches right near Boston, and that's because these systems didn't have as much rainfall as was once forecasted. These systems have transitioned to snow much quicker than what we have noticed. So I think somewhere in between the GFS and the European model is going to be quite accurate. And then you add in the shorter range models for snowfall, for the lake effect snowfall, and I think you have a pretty good forecast right there. Now, here's the icon model. Notice that area in northwestern Indiana. There will be a band of lake effect, and I'm going to show that in my snowfall forecast that'll set up over that area. So if you live in that area, make sure that you are paying attention when I go over my snowfall forecast. But then again, look at those amounts near the Great Lakes, closer to 12 to maybe even 15 inches of snowfall. Here's what I believe this would be. This is the RGEM model, if I'm not mistaken, and we're looking at those amounts. This model hasn't even finished yet. The portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, upstate New York aren't even finished with this storm, but it's showing a bigger band of snowfall for portions of Ohio and Kentucky. And then here's what the National Weather Service does with this storm. And again, it's not going to be too high just yet. This only goes through Tuesday morning, so the entire storm isn't done yet. And also, the National Weather Service is going to try and be a little bit more conservative with those snowfall totals, just so that they don't make any outlandish claims too early on with this storm. And then here's the NAM 3CAM model, which again isn't even finished with its model run yet, and it's already pumping out a good stripe of snowfall for the Ohio Valley. Now, here's my forecast that I've been talking about throughout this video. Now, this is going to be going from about Sunday. This will actually be from Monday to the 3rd of December, which I believe would be Thursday. And we're looking at under an inch of rainfall, and then we'll add on your snowfall totals later. Under an inch of rainfall for much of this area, and then 1 to 2 inches as you get for portions of the southeast, and then kind of from the east coast, if you go about 50 miles inland and kind of north of there from the Appalachians to 50 miles west of the east coast, that's where you're looking at that 1 to 2 inch band. I think right along the coast you might be too far away from the system to actually pick up close to an inch of snowfall. And then that 2 to 3 inch area, it's going to be confined to portions of the southeast and especially portions of the Gulf states, and then another area for portions of eastern New England. And then a 3 to 5 inch area, because areas of eastern Maine might actually get closer to 5 inches of rainfall, especially if you live in northeastern Maine. As you get closer to the Canadian border, that's where you might get closer to 3 or 5 inches of rainfall. Now let's start adding in your snowfall amounts. Now, Flakes are possible throughout this region for portions of northern Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, as well as portions of Tennessee, as well as another area in portions of the Northeast. That's where flakes are possible. Don't be surprised if you get a couple lingering flakes on the backside of the system. That's where you might see most of your accumulation if you live that far to the south, or if you live within that band in the Northeast. Now, that's where you're looking at flakes possible. Under an inch of snowfall is also possible in any of these areas. So this is where I'm thinking any of these areas will see at least some accumulation. Now, here's your 1 to 3 inch area, and that includes some of the higher elevations in Tennessee, as well as much of Kentucky through much of the Appalachians, and basically everywhere from the Appalachians westward until you hit about Illinois is dealing with 1 to 3 inches of snowfall. Don't forget about the area in the UP of Michigan and northern Wisconsin, looking at maybe 1 or 2 inches from lake effect as well. 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, again, for those higher elevations in Tennessee, as well as you get into the Appalachians and into portions of the Ohio Valley. That's where you're looking at 3 to 6 inches of snowfall as well. I think areas in the Adirondacks might be able to pump out closer to 6 inches of snowfall in some cases, and then 6 to 12 inches of snowfall, and that's for the higher elevations in eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, as well as for eastern West Virginia, especially in those highest elevations. We also see that area for the western Adirondacks and into portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, especially western upstate New York, and then into parts of Detroit. I think into southeastern Michigan around Detroit. I think that's going to be your biggest area for snowfall. The I-90 corridor from about Buffalo to Erie to Cleveland, and then maybe getting closer to Toledo is probably going to be your worst area for snowfall in those areas. That's where I think you'll get the most snowfall out of this event, and that's it reflected by this 12 to 18 inch area, where I think this is going to be mainly lake effect driven, but I think closer to the Great Lakes you might pick up closer to 12, 13, 14, maybe even 15 inches of snowfall. So this has been a bit of a longer upload, and I do apologize that for those of you who do like those shorter uploads. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I will answer all of your comments for the most part. As well, if you are interested, my winter forecast and my December forecast are coming out in the next 2 days, so make sure you are subscribed, leave a like on the video so it does get out to more people, and be sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of my future uploads. Anyways, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.